Hello, everybody. We'd like to welcome you to the RATH by AVIRE two-way communication system for rescue assistance webinar. We are set to get started here in just about a minute. So behind the scenes, we are letting all of the people that are joining right now into the meeting. So just hold tight and we'll give everybody about a minute or two for those that join here just after the top of the hour. Just wanted to welcome you. My name is Ken Brunbauer. I'm our marketing manager for the Americas here at RATH by AVIRE, and we'll get started in about a minute or two. Just hold tight. Thank you. Okay, once again, welcome everybody. I think we'll get started, and as others join, they can join us in progress. Once again, my name is Ken Brunbauer. I'm the marketing manager for the Americas here at RATH by AVIRE. We'd like to welcome you today to our webinar that's going to be focused on two-way communication systems for rescue assistance. We're going to get into some topics around the code that addresses those types of systems and the type of offerings that we have here at RATH by AVIRE. And just wanted to start, one, by welcoming you and thanking you for taking some time out of your day to spend with us today. A little bit of housekeeping in the invitations and what your expectations were going into the meeting today was that Maya Smith and Tim Jacobson from our team were going to be co-presenting. Unfortunately, we've had some illness and some challenges there that were unexpected, so they are both unable to be with us today, but in their place is one of our other highly qualified regional sales managers. Her name is Jamie Moore. She's our Western Territory sales manager. So she's going to be running through the topics with you today, and we'll be able to answer any of your questions. And what we ask is, as we go through the topics and the content today, there is the Q&A tab that you can use to drop in any questions that you may have. And what we'll do is we'll have a Q&A section at the end, and we'll try to get to as many or all of those questions as we can. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie to go through our topic for the day. Jamie, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate the introduction. You can hear me okay? Okay, great.
Jamie, are you still muted?
I am unmuted. Can you hear me? Ken, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, excellent. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and turn off my camera. I'll open it up again at the end of the presentation. Thanks for joining the AVIRE presentation today on area of refuge and two-way communication systems. I am the regional sales manager, happy to fill in for my colleagues, unfortunately, that Ken had explained were not able to be here today. We will also follow up with any questions, not only at the end, but following up, each regional manager will follow up with inquiries as well. AVIRE manufactures emergency communication products and systems that connect and protect people in critical moments. This includes the AOR two-way communication systems that we'll be talking about today, as well as elevator phones, communication and detection, public safety, and cellular communication options. So today I'm going to talk primarily about the Smart Command system. But we'll cover codes and standards, including IBC, NFPA 72, UL 2525, a little bit on ADA. We'll go over scope and design of the systems, the features and benefits and the components overall of the Smart Command system, and then close it out with any remarks and questions and answers. An area of refuge is a designated space in a building that requires a two-way communication system for assisted rescue during an emergency. The concept was established to provide a location for building occupants who cannot traverse the stairs without assistance and wait for emergency response to get on site. So that could be somebody that, although it was originally designed for somebody that has a physical limitation, people with disabilities, elderly people, adults with young children, or medical conditions, or people that simply cannot escape the building. We've all seen the sign within a building that says, in case of emergency, do not use the stairs. If there is a fire and you go to, do not use the elevator, use the stairs. If there is a fire and the elevator ceases to operate, the system is there for that purpose, that you can communicate off-site that you are in need of emergency assistance. While the function of these areas do not change, the location and the terminology used sometimes does. The safe location for two-way emergency assistance could be designated in an area of refuge within the stairwells. It could be at the elevator landing, or could be exterior outside of the building in a balcony situation here that's termed an exterior area of assisted rescue. Just going over some of the time frames with code. Area of refuge was originally in the 1990s, when George W. Bush was in office, signed into the ADA, which pretty much gave people that have a physical limitation access to the first floor within a building, and then every floor above or below that level, that entry level, typically by a ramp or a lift. An IBC included area of refuge in the standard for new building construction in 1997. And at that time, the space was primarily designated at the stairwell. In 2007, IBC designated the fire marshal as the official code enforce. So typically the final decision does go to the fire marshal of where the system is going to be and some of the operations. Around the same time, NFPA included area of refuge in the standard as part of NFPA 72, which is in Chapter 24. However, NFPA introduced a change to the location at that time, stating in a fully sprinklered building, the two-way communication system can be located at the elevator landing. So that's when we start to see some of the location changes from the stairwell into an elevator landing, which is probably about, I'd say 95% of the time. Now the location is designated at that elevator lobby. And in 2016, NFPA also introduced supervision and survivability of the system. So at that point, we begin to look at this system a little bit more like a fire alarm system and truly a life safety system. Which brings us to where we are today with NFPA 72 2022 as well as IBC 2024, introducing the requirement for the system to meet UL 2525 standards. In the past, as a manufacturer, we always tested our systems to UL, but this standard goes above and beyond what the previous testing. So it goes above just electrical circuitry and is really specific to how the device specifically needs to function as well as the system performance holistically. So getting into code, per IBC 1009.3.3, an area of refuge in the stairwell will be included in an enlarged floor level landing or shall be accessed by an area of refuge. So there's really only a couple of exceptions to that. It is not needed within the stairwell where the two-way communication system is going to be at the elevator landing. So typically it's only going to be one or the other. There's a couple of exceptions to that. We will not discuss IBC 403, but that is one exception in high rises when the stairwell is locked. Or the AHJ could be another exception. So ultimately, if the AHJ is can require both call boxes to be within the stairwell as well as the elevator landing. It's also not required in the stairwells and building equipped with an automatic sprinkler system. So as I just talked about per code, we have seen that historically the stairwell was the first location, and now in a fully sprinklered building, the location can be at the elevator landing. So typically in a fully sprinklered building, which is what we see today, it will be at the elevator landing. It's also not required in stairwells serving open parking garages. It's not required in smoke protected or open air assembly seating areas. It's not required in group R2 occupancies. And it's also not required in stairwells access from a refuge area in conjunction with the horizontal exit. So those are a few exceptions to when the area of refuge is included in the stairway. It shall be accessible from the space it serves by an accessible means of egress. And it does need to have a 30 by 52 inch space within the stairwell where a wheelchair can go. It can park and they can use the call box to communicate off-site or communicate that they need emergency assistance. And people can still safely evacuate around that wheelchair. So people still need to safely be able to get out. And then area of refuge shall be provided within a two-way communication system. So we'll talk a little bit more about the elevator landing in a few slides. Getting into the signage requirements for area of refuge at the stairwell, the signage does need to be provided at and identified within the area of refuge. So each door needs to be marked with a sign that says that this is the area of refuge. That would also be included in an exterior area of refuge. It does need to have both visual characters, raised characters, and braille on the sign, and include the international symbol of accessibility. And where exit signs shall be illuminated as well. So you'll typically see this type of sign as a photoluminescent option in case the power does go out, that area is indicated, it is the area of refuge. There should be directional signage at the exits, at the elevator landing, and within the area of refuge itself. And then lastly, there should be instructions on how to summons assistance posted adjacent next to the call box. So that does let the person know how they summons assistance and how to use the two-way communication system. And then lastly, there should always be the sign that does say, if you are able to use the stairs, please do so as soon as possible. And in case of emergency, do not use the elevator, use the stairs. So the two-way communication system at the elevator landing shall be provided at the landing serving each elevator or bank of elevators on each accessible floor that is one or more stories above or below the exit level of discharge. It is not, a couple of exceptions to this as well. The system is not required at the landing serving each elevator or bank of elevators where it is provided within the area of refuge. So just like we saw in the section for area of refuge, it's typically only one or the other, with few exceptions. It is also not required on floors providing ramps. It's not required at landings with service elevators, with freight elevators, private residence elevators, and it's not required in Group I2 or I3 facilities. Now, primarily with Group I2, I3 facilities, these types of facilities do have emergency evacuation teams in place that know how to help evacuate the general public, as well as somebody that does have a physical limitation. So I typically get the question quite frequently, like, if like the prisons and jails typically will not have a two-way communication system. However, I do see very often that hospitals, ambulatory centers, medical centers will still include the system per best practice. But technically, both of those types of facilities are exempt. The requirements for the system itself, it does need to provide communication between each required location, which is the call box on each floor, above or below the exit level, and the fire command center or the central control point within the building. And that location does need to be approved by the fire department or the AHJ. So again, we have the call boxes on each floor, and then we have the base station that is typically located in the FCC. If the central control point or that base station is not constantly attended, then the two-way communication system needs to have timed automatic capabilities to an approved location, which is typically a monitoring company or 911. And the system needs to have both audible and visual signals. Lastly, per IBC 2024, the system does need to be listed in accordance with UL 2525 and installed in accordance to NFPA 72. So those are two of the primary, the largest changes that have occurred with the most recent code additions. I also get the question very frequently of what's constantly attended. A constantly attended location would typically be approved by the AHJ if it is something like a security office that does have trained personnel in emergency evacuation. So potentially a campus that has a centralized security office, those that staff 24/7 that is trained in emergency evacuation. Ultimately, it is going to be up to the AHJ. And then the directions on how to summons assistance needs to be posted adjacent to the call box with a written identification, just like it for an area of refuge, so that person is aware how to summons assistance, and it does need to have visual characters. This map is taken directly off of the IBC website, and you can see each state adopts pretty much its own IBC as well as NFPA codes. And here we have at least almost every state has adopted 2012 and beyond. Even though the state and even the state may adopt a certain edition, every jurisdiction sometimes has different requirements as well. For example, Denver requires the system calls off to 911. Each call box needs to have covers on the call box, and the instruction sign in Denver does have additional requirements for summoning assistance that includes additional characters that need to be printed on it. So I always recommend that you consult with us. The representatives at AVIRE do a great job of understanding what is taking place at the local level, whether it's additional operational requirements or potentially backup battery requirements. But ultimately, as I've mentioned a couple times, the AHJ is always going to be the official code in force. So definitely check with the local jurisdiction or AHJ if there are specific questions in regards to the requirements. So everything that we just talked about with IBC is pretty much the same in NFPA. We still have, this applies to the stairway communication systems, elevator landings, and it does need to be listed in accordance with UL 2525. We still have the remote locations or the call boxes on each floor above or below the exit level. We have the master control or the central control point, also termed as the base station. But then NFPA says that we need to have primary and secondary power. The system needs to have live two-way voice communication between the call box and the constantly attended location. It needs to be located in a central control point within the building. And if it is not constantly attended, it needs to call off-site to a monitoring company or 911, and that also needs to be approved by the AHJ. A couple of additional aspects to NFPA. If the system does call off site, it does need to have the specific location within the building enunciated to the monitoring company or 911 before the operator opens up two-way communication. So for example, if somebody is trapped within the building, they would push the call box, it would go off site to the monitoring company or 911. They would hear that audible message that says the address, let's say 2356 North 67th Street, East Elevator Floor 2. And that is going to repeat until the operator chooses to open up two-way communication and talk with the person that is trapped within the building. That location also needs to be on the base station. So the base station will have the exact location of where that person is trapped within the building. In case, if it is being answered on site, then the person that is addressing the emergency situation or picking up the call on site is aware. But also, if it does go off site and an emergency response chooses to dispatch the fire department, when the fire department does get on site and they go to the FCC, they can see exactly where that person is trapped within the building. It also prioritizes the calls that are taking place. So in the case where you have a high-rise building, you might have, let's say, floor 10 in the middle of the building on fire. You have somebody that pushes a call box on floor 10, then you have somebody on 12, and then you have somebody on 11, and then somebody on 13. Those calls need to be prioritized off-site to the monitoring company and 911, as well as on the base station, so it is clear what calls came through in priority. And at least 8 of those calls need to be on the LCD screen of the base station. Then lastly, it does need to be hands-free and have both audible and visual signals. In case somebody is hearing impaired or there are just loud horns and strobes going off in the building, might be chaotic and people are trying to evacuate, you might not be able to hear what is taking place at the call box, or you might not be able to hear the two-way communication, but you can clearly tell that there are visual signals that indicate what is taking place on the system. Signage is for the directional sign is the same with NFPA. That direction on how to summons assistance needs to be posted adjacent to the call box. It needs to have written identification and needs to have braille of where the person is within the building as well. So each location and each floor is printed on the sign. NFPA also states, oops, I think I skipped ahead there. NFPA also states that the system needs to remain survivable for at least the same level as the building. So there's a lot of text on the screen, and the basic rule of thumb is if the building is survivable to a level 2 and beyond, that the system remains survivable to that level. Even if the building is, maybe a level 2 with it around the elevator and a level 1 or lower in the other areas of the building, typically it would be the system would be installed to the level of the elevator landing. That's typically achieved a couple different ways. It's utilizing CI, CIC, or potentially a protected raceway. You could use plenum in a protective raceway. Ultimately, the AHJ is going to be the final decision maker, especially when it comes to any alternatives to that. And then the system also needs to be inspected on an annual basis. This is a little bit of a gap within the industry. It is sometimes overlooked, but just like with fire alarm, the system does need to be inspected on an annual basis for both visual and functional testing. Everything that we talked about also applies to NFPA 101. I will mention that like both NFPA 72 and IBC in 2022 and 2024, now NFPA 101 does also list that the system needs to be in accordance to UL 2525. So now these systems do need to be tested to meet that standard. So I've talked a lot about that so far. I've talked a lot about the UL 2525 standard. What is it? It is published best practice by Underwriter Laboratories on a product or a system to meet safety and security and sustainability standards. This is done with collaboration among various experts in the industry that have the common goal to minimize the risk of electrical shock and fires from electrical products. And testing to the standard is typically accomplished through a national recognized testing laboratory approved by OSHA. So these are private independent organizations that do the testing and inspect and certify the devices as well as the system that it is compliant to the published standard of UL 2525. The device is then given a certification or a mark that indicates the safety standard has been approved. So on the right hand side of the screen, you can see that there's various brands listed there or companies that do testing or are national recognized testing laboratories by OSHA. Some common ones that we see, ETL, UL, but they do need to test the system and list to the standards of the codes that we had just talked about. The system I mentioned goes above just electrical circuitry for testing. So we test variable voltage, we test things like environmental testing to extreme temperatures, humidity, impact testing, shock testing, endurance, the audio performance. So the system does need to meet certain audio performance levels at ambient noise for clear communication. It does need to have battery backup for 24 hours on standby and 4 hours of active talk time. So that's something that I want to mention as well. Per NFPA 2022 was a change. So now the system does need to operate for 4 hours on active talk time, where previous code editions did operate on 5 minutes of active talk time. So the increase in the battery is pretty substantial. The functional, we also test functional mechanics and polarity reversal. For scope and design, the primary components of the system and for the Smart Command system specifically include the BOSS controller, which does have a supervision and distribution built right into it as one component. It does have the call commander or the base station. As you can see, that's the red phone on the screen. It has call boxes, again, on each floor above or below the exit level. And then it has the power supply that is going to include the battery and the UPS. Additional components do include the signage, cable, and then off-site communication options, which I will cover. Communication options include historically POTS lines. So the system and the Smart Command system is an analog system, but there are additional alternatives that can be considered, which include digital, VoIP, and cellular. We do manufacture a RATH cellular gateway with a RATH SIM card that does come with a 2-year plan, which is a very reliable option, definitely trending within the market. VoIP is another option. However, I do see that cellular is probably trending over VoIP, but both of those are alternatives to all the systems that we do have available. Some of the features and the benefits of the Smart Command system, of course, do include that it is compliant with NFPA 72 IBC and is tested to the UL 2525 standard with a certification. It's a flexible system, so We offer two head ends, one that goes up to 32 call boxes, and then the next edition is actually going to be launched within the next month or two that will have the UL 2525 testing completed on it, up to 128 zones. It does have the battery backup and has built-in supervision into the head end. Really nice that it is addressable. It does have daisy chained wiring, so it's more efficient than a home run system with centralized programming as well. So the time to install, not only from the wire and being an addressable system, but with the centralized programming, is reduced substantially. Also, minimal amount of hardware makes it pretty simple overall. So let's walk through some of the areas from a visual standpoint of where the system is within a building. Each call box is going to be installed above or below the exit level of discharge, so as long as there's one story above or one story below. It does have, we have up to 32 call boxes on one system and then up to 128 on the other. The speaker volume does need to be at 70 decibels at a minimum per UL 2525. It does need to have two-way live voice communication, be hands-free, and again have both those audible and visual signals on it in case it is just loud and chaotic within the building. So on the system, you'll actually see the green powered light on when it's just powered normally. If a call is taking place, this phone will turn red. And when a call is answered, whether it's at the base station or off-site to a monitoring company or 911, this red phone will turn blinking. There are options for flush mount, surface mount, and NEMA rated on the call box itself. And then lastly, the mushroom button does need to be at least 1 inch, but it is a requirement per UL 2525. The base station does need to have the calls prioritized on it. So this is typically going to be located in the FCC. We have a large screen available on it. It does have a hands-free option as well, but those calls are actually going to prioritize on the screen in the order that they were received. It also has a call all function. So in the case where we might have a high rise with multiple people trapped in the building, those calls are stacking in priority on the base station screen here. When emergency response does get on site and they go to the FCC, instead of picking up each call individually, they can do a call all function, which pretty much, they would just go ahead and it'd say emergency response is here. We know you're in the building. We're sending teams up now. And that would be enunciated to all of the call boxes for the people that are trapped within the building. This also does have a base station. The base station does have a surface mount and a flush mount, as well as a desk mount option. The boss, we call it the boss because it is the brains of the system, but this is the head end. Again, two different options, up to 32 call boxes or 128. We can have up to 2 communication lines on the 128 system, and it can be programmed to call to each to 2 external phone numbers. So if you'd like it to call to potentially security and then to a monitoring company, it does have that capability. It does have supervision built into it. So if there is a trip to the fire alarm panel, and the system is monitored for both power and communication, it will trip the fire alarm panel, and there will be a code, a matrix that comes up on the LCD screen that does indicate where the fault is on the system. And then lastly, of course, we are monitoring for both primary and secondary power. The power supply does need to operate on 24 hours on standby, and then the 4 hours of additional talk time. So this is an 84 amp battery. That is typically included in the 2-hour fire rated room to meet survivability requirements. We usually see it in the FCC with the head end and the base station. Although there are some jurisdictions, just keep in mind, that do have different requirements on the local level. I'll pick on Denver again. Denver does require that the base station is included. It is located within usually about 10 feet of the front door next to the fire alarm panel. But then you would have the head end equipment in a 2-hour fire rated room, whether that's the FCC or could potentially be like a stacked IT room. So this is a wire diagram for the 32 zone system. It does have 200 feet between each device as a distance. So from the boss to the first call box, as well as from the boss to the call commander at 500 feet. The total distance loop limitation is 1,200 feet, and it does have a max per loop of 24 call boxes. So you'll have 2 loops on the boss, up to 24 call boxes per loop, and you can choose how you would like to split up to 32 call boxes among these 2 loops. So for example, you could have 20 on one and 12 on the other, or split it evenly like 16 and 16. Does require 18.4, and this system does have the capability of calling off to utilizing one external phone line. The 128 zone system that is coming out soon, within the next month or two. Again, we are working on the UL 2525 testing to be completed on that system. Once that is, it will be launched to the market. It will have 4 loops. So you'll see a little bit more on the front end, on the front of the distribution or the boss. 4 loops, up to 32 call boxes per loop. This system does have a max distance between each call box of 650 feet, and then again from the boss to the call commander of 500 feet. The total distance limitation for each loop is 2,000 feet. Same wire, it's going to utilize the 18.4, but it does have the capability of using two external phone lines. So if you would like a POTS line and a cellular, or a primary and a secondary for backup options, this system does have that capability. It is programmed centrally by a laptop. I like to say, if I can do this, anybody can do this. It is pretty straightforward and easy overall. It does take the installer or who's programming the system step by step. You have to complete one to go to the other. When you hook up the system, it's going to automatically recognize what's installed. So it recognizes how many call boxes are on the system, how many phone lines, and how many call commanders. Right now, the systems do have the capability of utilizing one call commander. You're also going to input that information. So if for some reason it's not recognizing the last call box on the loop, that's going to be pretty evident as soon as the system is hooked up through the Quick Start program. The address for the building is going to be inputted. It is text to speech, almost like a Siri voice that is enunciated. So there's no recording at the call box. It is all done centrally here. It is also phonetic and text to speech. So in this example, we're using N as an abbreviation. If you want it to say north, you have to type in north. That's how it recognizes what. And you'll hear it as you go through as well. It will actually sound, and you can test the sound of what would be enunciated to the monitoring company or 911. Then each call box is named. So you would go through and you would name each call box, like East Elevator Floor 2, East Elevator Floor 3, West Elevator Floor 2, West Elevator Floor 3. You're going to go ahead and you're going to choose what you want enunciated offsite, so possibly emergency communication for two-way emergency assistance, and then the address, and then the location of where that person is trapped within the building. You're going to go ahead and hit upload, and it does recognize an address with the daisy chained and centralized programming. It takes a couple minutes per call box, and that would complete the programming of the system. So it's pretty simple and efficient overall. So as I mentioned, it does use less wire, less time to install overall, has the centralized programming. We offer quite a bit as far as the sales and support, which I'll talk about following. But the design and the innovation of this system is not only meets UL 2525, but is just more efficient, even if it is not required by the newest code standards, with less cost overall to install. It's a highly recommended system to consider for design, but it can be added on to almost every fire alarm bid that is at least one or more stories. So again, as long as it has one story above the first or one story below that has public access, it can be almost every fire alarm bid. We do offer a full line of area of refuge systems that meet the applications, scope and design, and the local requirements if it is code driven. We do have the smart rescue system, which is for smaller projects. It goes up to 10 zones. Is still a very efficient system as far, especially when there's some older code additions that are considered at the local level or even at the state level. We do have the command center system, which is an analog system that goes up to 116 zones that will have separate distribution and supervision modules, and it is a home run system. And then we also have the IP system, which is a VoIP system that will utilize either an existing network or a standalone network, as well as PoE switches and routers. I would typically recommend that system for widespread applications like an arena, casino, or a stadium. And then the smart command system that's the addressable daisy chain system. So we could typically find a solution for you depending on the application and the requirements of the project. Of course, we've talked a lot about compliance. We've talked a lot about the time with install, but it's really important to consider the liability from a code requirements standpoint, that if it is not installed or if the system is not working, that this is a life safety system designed to help somebody that is in need, and if for some reason it is not installed in the building, the liability is substantial, which can lead to legal situations, but potentially loss of life. So it's important to consider. I mentioned the resources. We do have a sales team across the U.S. We also have our tech support and our inside sales and customer service team that are always available. Quotes, POs, inventory, questions. Our website is a great resource. We have our data sheets, code requirements, manuals, CAD drawings. Our sales team is always happy to help with any type of specific application questions, code questions that come up, specifications or battery calculations. So we're here to help and support in any way that we can, and we have a lot of different resources according to what might work the best. So with that, I am going to just go ahead and open up questions. Let's see.
Yeah. And just a reminder for everybody, the opportunity to ask some questions is open through the Q&A functionality on the Teams meeting. So there's a few that are already in there, Jamie. So if you want to kind of start at the bottom and work your way up, you can. But if there are other questions that any attendee has, if you can just drop those into the Q&A section, we will get through as many as we can for the next 10 minutes or so.
Okay, so it looks like I have the first question being the price comparison between the Smart Rescue and the Command Center. The command center system is going to, it's definitely going to be a higher from a hardware standpoint for a cost, but it's not substantial. And I would probably say from the command center system, you're maybe looking at like a 10 to 15% cost differentiation, but the biggest cost savings is going to be within the wire, given that it's daisy chained, it is addressable, and has centralized programming. So we do estimate that it takes about a quarter of the time to install than some of the previous systems, specifically the Smart Rescue and the Command Center. So it's going to be a cost savings from that aspect. Okay, so I do see that there were some questions on how far away will the 70 dB need to be measured for call stations? So there typically is, as of right now, per code requirements, intelligibility is not considered a part of code specifically. So the system is tested to meet the requirements of UL 2525 with the National Tested Laboratory, and that is part of the consideration of the audibility as well as the speaker volume at 70 decibels. I would recommend, typically if you are going to check the decibels, that you would be maybe an arm's length away from the call box itself, with the meter indicating, closer to your body, the decibels at that level. So maybe somebody that's standing, in front of it, not just directly in front of the call box, but that would be like a normal application of somebody that would push the button at a call box and test it at that level. I typically don't see, like an actual intelligibility type testing that is done on the call box, but I wouldn't be surprised if that comes as a part of code moving forward. Will RATH provide a battery calc that is fillable in different parts and quantities for our submittals? We do have a battery calculator that is available today, and we do have current draws on the system. We are actually working at looking at expanding that as well. So we do have a resource available today, and are looking at expanding those resources according to some of the needs that we're seeing at the local level, or requirements that are taking place. Is it possible to get a copy of the presentation? And Ken, I do believe that we, will have a copy of the presentation, or we'll be able to follow up with that.
Yes, that is correct. We are recording this, and we'll be posting this online, if not later today, within the next day or so.
Okay. I see a couple of comments in regards to product questions specifically, like it'd be great to make the back boxes bigger for wire. Some questions in regards to firmware upgrades. Those are all things that are great feedback. Thanks for including those, that feedback into the chat. Our product managers also take all that into consideration as a part of our R&D and what our pipeline kind of looks like for expansions of the system moving forward. So thanks for including that information. I do see, is the Janus Cellular phone line UL 2525 approved? Is it required to be, and will we get a copy of the recording? We might have presentation information. The copy of the recording, I believe, is posted on our YouTube channel, so that would be available to listen to as well. The cellular device, our cellular gateway, is not UL 2525 approved, and I don't. My understanding is that the communication line itself does not need to be. However, there may be some other components for UL. I just don't know that it falls under UL 2525. I'm just looking through a couple more of these. And I don't know if you see any more that I might have missed. Okay, so I see another one that came through. Is the number of remote call stations in a daisy chain 24 or 32? I saw two different stations. Okay, so um, the the system that's on the market today, up to 32 call boxes, has 2 loops available on it, and each loop can have up to 24 call boxes. So as long as it's with the distance limitation of that loop, you can have up to 24 call boxes per loop, but only a total of 32. So you would split that 32 among the 2 loops, however the design for the building, whatever would apply. It does not need to be even. I get that all the time. If does it need to be 5 and 5 in order to use both loops, or does it need to be 16 and 16? You can split the 32 call boxes among the 2 loops however you would like. And that goes for the same on the larger system. That is the expansion system up to 128 zones. That will be launched soon. So that one will have 4 loops available on it and up to 32 call boxes per loop. So again, however you choose to split the 128 call boxes among those 4 loops is completely up to what the design of the building will require, as long as it meets the distance limitation of each loop, and only up to 32 call boxes per loop. So hopefully.
Sorry about that. Jamie, one other question that was in there from Robert was for the smart command, how do you obtain software?
Okay, so if there is any type of programming software questions, the first step would be to connect with our tech support. They'll walk through any type of upgrades that could potentially be needed on the system. We also have your regional sales managers can work with you directly. We do have install training available. That can be done a couple of different routes depending on what works best for you or your team, and does include training for install per system and a certification that does come along with it. So after the training is done, there's typically a test that is taken, and then that test is passed for a certification. So that's a couple of different ways that may help from an install standpoint. But our tech support would typically walk through being the first point of contact, whether that's through a meeting that is set up or calling in direct, and they will walk through any changes or upgrades that are needed on the system. I do see another question. Are there code requirements required for survivability and backup power for outgoing communication method, telco, VoIP, cell? So per code, all pathways of the system need to be survivable for at least the same level as the building. That does include the communication line. And I do see some areas that enforce that a little bit more stricter than others. I've come across some projects that actually require like a POTS line to be hardened to meet two-way 2-hour requirements. So it does depend on what's being enforced in the local level, but per code it does say all pathways of the system. It typically, what I would recommend with a gateway option is, you usually have the head end equipment in a 2-hour fire rated room. You're going to connect the gateway to the boss in the smart command situation. You can also plug it into the UPS for backup requirements, but our gateway does come with batteries built into it as well. In order to meet the 24 hours and 4 hours, though, I would recommend plugging it into the UPS. And then in that case, if you do need additional antenna strength, you can put the antenna in an area within the building that has the best reception. So hopefully that answers that question. Again, for any questions in regards to battery calculations, firmware, your regional sales managers are more than happy to help, as well as our tech support. If we can definitely give you what you need. We are working on expansions for some additional information with battery calcs as well. That continues to be an area where submittals and fire inspectors are actually requiring more information. So we are expanding that information as well. Ken or Mike, I don't know if you see any other questions that I might not have addressed. I think I have everything on my end.
The only one I'm looking at, Jamie, is there was one that they didn't have a question. It was about local jurisdictions in California and the unawareness for the systems to be submitted. Does the submittal and the awareness fall for the building department or the fire department, or does it kind of vary by jurisdiction?
Sure. Yep. It absolutely varies by jurisdiction. Most of the time, no, it depends on what is taking place at the local level. So I do see some areas that may have the submittals as a part of the building code and reviewed by the building inspector, and then sometimes commissioning of the system done by the fire marshal. Other times where the fire inspection team is handling the whole process. I even have some cases where submittals are just taken into consideration and final commissioning is not done and tested, and others where submittals are not considered and the system is commissioned. So it does depend on the local level. As we see code evolve, and as this system really is starting to take a look like a life safety system, and especially with UL 2525 and the most recent code changes, that's creating a lot of visibility that is taking place with some accountability of the jurisdictions looking at this like a fire alarm system. So with those changes, more and more are starting to make sure that the submittal process is included, as well as final commissioning of the system, and that the system is tested to meet the code requirements. So that continues to evolve, and I would expect with some more code additions that will come out in the future, it's just going to continue to grow, and we're going to see more and more enforcement on the system. So it does depend on the local level, but I always recommend going through in detail the process to the level that you can, including submittals, all of the components that are considered as a part of that. And then we do have some really good resources for installation and inspections checklists that can be used not only at the time of install and at the point of commissioning with the fire department, but also for annual inspection. So those are, a couple of key resources.
All right, thanks, Jamie. There's a few others that just popped in. Patrick asked a couple of questions. One is, do you need 2-hour CI cable and a shaft rated for 2 hours?
Yeah, typically you do not. Ultimately, of course, it's going to be up to the AHJ, but typically in a 2-hour rated shaft, you would be able to use a lesser rated wire option like plenum.
Okay, thank you. And then the other one that he asked was, if you have a 2-hour stacked mechanical room, do you have to have CI cable?
Usually you do not for that as well. So as long as it is ran within, like a raceway or a 2-hour stacked rooms, in that case, you could use a cheaper alternative like plenum. You can also,
I will mention. And then lastly, this will be our last question that we'll get to because we want to be respectful of everybody's time. Nathan had asked, is tech support available by email or call back rather than having to wait in line when they call over the phone?
Yes, we do have an email for tech support that can be a great resource. The team also has the availability to set up meetings. So if you do have, you can reach out beforehand, whether it's via email or by phone and set up a meeting when you are on site. That's another way to go about it.
All right, thanks, Jamie. And part of that, we're working to continuing to update our website. We'll get that tech support email address out there. So when you go to the contact page, you can see not only the phone number, but also the email address as well. And we're just continuing to find new ways to be able to reach out to you, to have you be able to reach out to us with questions and just challenges you may be having, so we can help you out. So with that, Jamie, thank you so much for going through everything today, for providing the overview and the update. For all of the attendees that joined us today, we do want to thank you for joining us, and all the questions that you asked were great. We will be, like we said, we are recording this, so a follow-up that you will see in your inbox will be a link to that recording. We will then also host it out on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and review anything that was discussed, you'll have that at your availability. So with that, thank you, everybody. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you and or talk with you soon.
Thanks everyone.
Again.
Take care. Bye.